Hello and welcome to another episode of the Access Vikings podcast. Ben Goessling and Andrew Krammer with you from the TCO Performance Center today. No Emily Leiker. We sent her out to Seattle early. She's out doing the big story on Sam Darnold, whom the Vikings will face on Sunday at Lumen Field. As for the Vikings quarterback situation, I guess a little bit TBD, Andrew, though we think it'll be Max Brosmer. He took the first team reps today as J.J. McCarthy, limited in practice as he returns from the concussion protocol, was able to participate in some of the individual drills. But we have every reason to think it will be Max Brosmer making his first start in the NFL in a building where the Vikings have not had a lot of success other than last year when the quarterback that is now starting for the Seattle Seahawks helped them win for the first time since 2006.
Yeah, it's now called Lumen Field, not CenturyLink Field, but it's still been a house of horrors at times for the Vikings in the past. We can go through those, certainly. But
back to the days of Quest Field, probably even.
That's right. I suppose Quest, it was called before that.
Lots of telecommunications mergers to keep track of in the Pacific Northwest.
It is Seattle, after all. And Sam Darnold, though, is the new face of the Seattle Seahawks. And their defense is doing very, very well, obviously. But this time, no Legion of Boom, no Russell Wilson. But they've done well under Mike Macdonald, the new head coach. And if it's Max Brosmer going in there, it's going to be, as we said about Detroit when they won a game there, a tough test in Seattle. But this time with Max, we see Kevin O'Connell practicing or coaching on Wednesday with Max, taking the first team reps, really hovering over him during quarterback drills, taking a real, not that he hadn't with J.J. McCarthy, obviously, but you can tell the onus he's putting on this with a young undrafted rookie, another young guy who's got such little experience at the position. So it's kind of a mystery box in terms of what we're going to expect or what to expect out of Max Brosmer, but they love what they saw out of him, obviously, this summer from what we heard from coaches and teammates.
Yeah, certainly a lot of positive reviews of what he did in training camp and in the preseason. Yeah. Now, the question with this, of course, is it's not basic coverages. It's not fourth string, fourth string players. It's a first string defense that has played awfully well this season that will be game planning for Max Brosmer. They don't have a ton of film to go off of, obviously, but they will have a lot of things to throw at him. Mike Macdonald, of course, the head coach in Seattle, well-respected defensive mind that got that job, coming out of the Baltimore system with John Harbaugh. So some of the things that they'll see are probably similar to what Michigan has run. So maybe J.J. McCarthy is helpful there because the kind of the family of defenses, I think, has had some commonalities over the years. But the Seahawks will throw a lot of different looks at the Vikings. It'll be a lot of different pressures from different coverage and front structures. So it will be a lot for Max Brosmer to try to figure out in a building that obviously is famously loud, famously difficult place to play, and the Seahawks are playing quite well with Sam Darnold.
Yeah, 8-3 in the NFC West. The NFC West looking much like a tough division, like the Vikings find themselves in as well. But 8-3, did we expect this out of Sam Darnold, Ben? We can get into the whole second guessing of the Vikings path and how they got here, but I don't know if anybody was expecting Sam Darnold to pick up right where he left off here in Minnesota.
Well, the funny thing is, the question of when you say where he left off, are we talking the structure of the season or those last two games, which I bring that up because that had a lot to do, obviously, with why he was not the quarterback. I think the plan was to go to J.J. McCarthy the whole time, but the decision became probably a little easier after the way he played, certainly in the Lions game, and then I think some of the protection failed in front of him in that Rams game. But as far as him picking up this quickly, I don't know that I would have expected he was going to be quite this good. I mean, Jackson Smith-Njigba has turned into possibly the best receiver in the NFL this season, and they have gotten a lot of things going with Sam Darnold at the controls. But, it's been interesting to see what they've been able to do with him, and kind of an offensive staff full of former Vikings coaches. Clint Kubiak, of course, the offensive coordinator. Andrew Janocko, who was on the staff with Clint Kubiak in Minnesota and in New Orleans, is the quarterback's coach there. So I think even Leslie Frazier is on that staff. So a lot of familiar faces, but the offensive structure of it, I think Darnold has played awfully well and certainly has, in some ways, picked up where he left off in the larger structure of last season. I think he's been able to, make some of those throws down the middle of the field that we saw last year. I think some of the concepts they've run have been similar to what we saw him do here, and certainly has invited a lot of conversation about whether the Vikings should have signed him. I find that probably to be a little bit disingenuous because I think everybody at the time was saying, okay, they need to move on, or at least understood that they needed to give J.J. McCarthy a shot. There was a lot of discussion about Sam Darnold. but nobody was sitting there saying, yes, this is going to happen. I think once we came out of the combine, certainly had the feeling of the franchise tag is not going to be the way they go.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of that gets forgotten in the discourse. And when you see how things play out and you see, maybe Javon Hargrave's not who we thought he was in the signing, or Jonathan Allen underperforming to an extent, and how they spent the money that they didn't use on Darnold, things get kind of skewed in revisionist history a little bit. But yeah, he completed 18 of 41 passes in that Detroit loss where they had the chance to win the division and take the number 1 seed in the NFC overall. And then obviously took 9 sacks in the Rams game. And then the Rams just beat him 2 weeks ago, which they forced him into 4 interceptions. And I obviously did not watch the game. I don't know how Sam looked, but I know he didn't win. And I know they didn't win in part because of his turnovers. So those games that he has that creep up, and the Vikings are in no place to, poo-poo that, because their quarterback play, begs for better performance at this point, certainly. But yeah, the reason they move on from him is because some of the games that still have cropped up for him in Seattle, at least one so far in their 8-3 record, and who knows what it's going to look like in the postseason. But that all cannot be forgotten in the conversation of, you had 2 options with Sam Darnold. Tag him for $40 million or sign him to a multi-year extension that he would agree to. And they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, and I think that was, everybody went in with their eyes open to that. That was the plan the whole time. And the thing we should point out with Darnold, too, is he's thrown 10 interceptions this year, and I think he's lost 4 fumbles. So he has not been perfect by any means. Obviously, you mentioned the Rams game, and they've had some other moments of that where he's turning the ball over. And that's been part of the story with him. I think even last year he threw 10 interceptions or something, which is a bigger number in the modern NFL, not necessarily the way we grew up, but that is considered to be a lot in the current NFL, and certainly a lot when you are playing for a team that has not created a ton of turnovers in its own right. I think the Seahawks are a ways below the margin in terms of takeaway, giveaway ratio. The Vikings certainly are. So this game could come down to which defense that has not done a great job of creating takeaways gets 1 or 2 on Sunday, whether it's Sam Darnold getting fooled into things with Brian Flores or Max Brosmer, we think, having that happening in Seattle. Brian Flores said on Tuesday, I love Sam, but we're going to come after him. Yeah. We're going to blitz him a lot.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, it was a great kind of, I'm not even sure how to phrase it, but just a great kind of way for him to dive into this in terms of, it was basically 200 words of praising the guy, saying I love him, built a great rapport, a great friendship, got to know each other in the cafeteria, the locker room, all these things. And then he just stops and goes, but we're going to blitz him this week. And then he chuckled like a Brian Flores typical, like, chuckle at the end, that you don't see him smile all too often in those press conferences. So I thought that was funny, just the way that he went into that. But you could tell, like, Flores was genuine in terms of his relationship with Darnold. We did see those guys talk quite a bit when they were here. I think Darnold, being a veteran quarterback who had seen a lot, appreciated Brian Flores' take on defenses and how he approached it. And certainly Flores, heard things from Darnold from an offensive perspective. But they're going to have ways to try and get after him. And I thought it was interesting. Flores mentioned, like, there may be some things that didn't bother him a year ago. We're going to see if those things still bother him this time around. If they don't, we'll move on. If they do, we're going to keep running it and keep pressing on that pressure point.
Well, it is interesting to think back on this because we've talked about it with McCarthy a little bit too, but Darnold got that experience in training camp where he's getting pressured and this defense doesn't hold back a ton, as we talked about a little bit last week, and it seemed like the internet got some fodder out of that with some headlines that were not even close to what we said on the show. But glad you had your fun with it. Appreciate watching the podcast. The thing here with Darnold is going to be, they have some tape on blitzes that have worked against him in the past because they've practiced these things. So I would imagine you go back to some of those things this week and say, hey, what got home against this line last year? What gave him trouble? Maybe you pull some of that back out.
Yeah, and I could see that happening. It's going to be difficult, though, to slow for a Vikings secondary that has not slowed many top receivers this year. To slow Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's got like 300 more yards or 200 than the next closest receiver. He's got 1,300 yards in 11 games. O'Connell talked about how they move him all over the formations. He's their X, their Z, whatever. They will align him in spots to get him free releases, get him into zones. The Vikings run.
Sounds familiar.
Right. The Vikings run a ton of zone coverages that Jordan Love, for instance, found some soft spots in some critical third down moments when they went 7 of 14 on third downs a week ago in Green Bay. So Darnold can do that. Like, he can buy time. We've seen him be able to move in the pocket. The question for me is, like, can Flores get him to the point where he performs, or he does not perform well under pressure?
Yeah.
We've seen him perform well against the blitz. We've seen him pick apart things at times. I don't think his numbers against 5+ rushers are too great this year compared to his other numbers, but when Darnold collapses, it's when pressure gets to him, much like a Jared Goff, where you can kind of melt him under the pocket if you can pin him down because he's so mobile, obviously.
Yep, and I think that becomes a lot of it. We saw that probably as clearly in Seattle last year as we ever have when he makes the throw late in the game. It was after I think his ankle had gotten hurt earlier in the series, and that I think was the same series where the headsets were going out and he had to run to the sideline and basically get the next play call from Kevin O'Connell without the headsets working. I know the play before he threw the touchdown to Justin Jefferson that basically won them the game. He was kind of hobbled before the play. He rolled out and then hit Jefferson by buying some time, hit Jefferson downfield. Jefferson makes the acrobatic catch to essentially ice that game. So we have seen it. We know everybody that watched Sam Darnold last year knows he can extend plays and make things happen. So the ways that they can get after him will become important to try to put him in situations where he has to throw and not be able to extend and play a little bit of backyard football. Having Jonathan Grenard, who was back at practice today, back on Sunday would be a big help in this regard. We sounded like he was close to being able to play on Sunday at Lambeau Field. I would think there's a good chance that he goes Sunday in Seattle. That's a big addition for this defense if they want to be able to get after Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and it was good to see him in practice on Wednesday because he had said last week that he was super confident that he would play, and then he didn't. So that kind of made everybody think, was there a setback? But the fact he was out there today seemed like he was participating at least on a limited basis would indicate that there wasn't any kind of major setback anyway. But I didn't see Dallas Turner. He seemed to be standing off to the side. Josh Metellus was not practicing either, as he had like 3 or 4 injuries from that game in Green Bay. But we'll see the status of those guys moving forward. But if they get Grenard and Van Ginkel back, they've only had those guys together for a handful of games this year. And when they're together, this defense up front looks a little different.
Yeah, and it'll have to, because we've seen this secondary struggle at times, especially when those quarterbacks that they're facing don't get pressured. If you can buy time against this team, I think there is a feeling that you can test that secondary. We certainly saw it with Jordan Love last week when he had chances to sit back and pick on the zones. I think you've seen those safeties, whether it's Josh Metellus or Harrison Smith or Theo Jackson, really. I mean, we've seen moments where those guys get tested, things in front of them. The dagger cuts that we saw Sam Darnold throw so well last year, I would imagine there's some of those things trying to pick on those safeties and throwing in front of those safeties, I would imagine, on Sunday. So they have to get home against him to help this secondary out. I think it's more important for them to do that than to trust that this secondary is going to be able to shut down a receiver that nobody really has this season. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba, like you said, is putting up NFL best numbers. They have Cooper Kupp in this group as well. So it's a good receiver core that knows how to attack coverages. And I think getting enough pressure on Darnold is going to be a bigger factor in this one than trying to assume that the coverages will have the better day against these receivers.
Yeah, unfortunately for the Vikings, this Seattle offense is built to kind of go along the same script that Green Bay's just did, in terms of they can do the death by 1,000 cuts and lean on a strong defense. Emmanuel Wilson ran for 30 times, was it? But in the first half, I don't think he had broken many big runs. Going back and watching it, it was just Jordan Love getting some clutch first downs and moving them downfield, and Wilson getting the 3-4 yard gains. They can do that with Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet in Seattle. That's a very good 1-2 punch at running back. And if the Vikings do not stop the run better than they did in Green Bay, and I didn't think they did a horrible job. Like I said, I just think it was a little too many of those 3 to 4 yard runs, not enough of the tackles for losses to set them back and force the opposing offense to do something. And if you can force Sam Darnold into 2nd and 12 or even a 3rd and 10 every now and then, those are the moments that you might be able to take advantage of as a defense. Because I don't know if Max Brosmer or JJ, if he ends up playing, I don't know if either of those guys are going to put up the kind of points that force Darnold to be chasing the Vikings.
Well, let's look a little bit at the offensive line, where we did not see Christian Darrisaw or Donovan Jackson on Wednesday. Kevin O'Connell said both of those players would not be practicing today, and we'll have to see how things go for either one of them with ankle injuries throughout the week. Andrew, if they don't have those two, I mean, we saw it late in that game in Green Bay, but if they don't have those two, it's hard to imagine that whoever's at quarterback is going to have a very easy time. Let's put it this way. If Max Brosmer is back there, the quick release, the anticipation we've seen him play with, he will need it to keep himself in this game and keep the offense moving forward. if one or both of those guys is not out there.
Yeah, Wes Phillips had mentioned this week, too, about the quick release with Brosmer, saying that at times this summer he would make mistakes unlike a typical rookie.
Yeah.
He would actually go too quickly through his progressions. I was kind of thinking that might be useful this week if you're playing behind Justin School
It might.
and Blake Brandel. But yeah, it didn't look too great when School was out there. Darisaw didn't look too great against Micah Parsons at times on Sunday, but few people do, I suppose. But if they're hobbled in any way, shape, or form, yeah, we don't even know how long Darisaw could play if he goes out there, because we've seen him a few times bow out of games, certainly. So this will be one where Max Brosmer against a defense in Seattle that's 4th, I believe, in sacks. They are 5th in pass deflections overall. They affect quarterbacks in every way, up front and when the ball's out of their hands. I think there are much easier teams for you to make your first NFL start against than the Seattle Seahawks defense.
On the road.
On the road, no less. But it's one that, in terms of the offensive line, it probably most affects, or not most affects, but the starting point should be the run game.
Yeah.
They had been blocking, I thought, so well with that starting 5. They had them back for just 3 quarters in Green Bay. They blocked really well with Blake Brandel at center against the Bears running the football. If School's out there, obviously that left side's not going to run block as well, and it's going to put Max in some tougher situations because they're going to have to lean on Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason.
Yeah, and they ran the ball well, especially in the first half in Green Bay last week. They got into a situation, I think they ran it 3 times after halftime because they get the stop, and then the muffed punt, puts the Packers in position to take a 11-point lead early in the third quarter, and the Vikings only ran it 3 times after that. They're going to have to be able to give some support to Max Brosmer with the run game. So that's, yes, where Justin School especially comes into this, because I think that's where you really see the difference. If you don't have Darisaw and it's Justin School there, I think there's probably a bigger drop-off there than there would be from Donovan Jackson to Blake Brandel at that left guard spot, especially in the running game. I mean, the pass protection, I think they lose some things there too. We've seen Brandel obviously struggle in pass protection at that spot, certainly in the playoff game, probably those last 2 games last year. But if they don't have Christian Darisaw being able to run to that side, becomes a lot more difficult, or him just being able to take care of things on the backside if they're running to the right. So a lot of that, I think, is something that they need to have to help Max Brosmer out, because you don't want him in situations where he's dealing with 3rd and long, that pass rush can come after you, you're working off silent counts, offensive lineman maybe a half step slower because of the noise. I mean, the noise out there is a real thing. I mean, that's, we're not breaking any news with that, but that is something that they are going to have to deal with. And they've done a good job, I think, with silent counts this year with J.J. McCarthy. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be, when you have a new quarterback and a new quarterback center relationship here too, those guys probably haven't practiced together much, if at all, Ryan Kelly and Max Brosmer. So it's just another variable that you have to deal with in a tough environment.
I would like to think that the discourse around Max Brosmer and how he plays will be healthier than the discourse around J.J. McCarthy, but I don't know that actually for a fact. Yeah. What do you think? How intriguing would it be if Max plays well?
The discourse will get quite lively, I think, if that is, in fact, what happens.
Yeah.
It would be very interesting to see how they'd go about it, because I continue to think this season is about definitively making some kind of a read on J.J. McCarthy. It doesn't mean that if he's bad all the rest of the year that anybody's going to be done with him. I think it may affect what they do with the rest of their quarterback depth chart next year if they feel like this may not go the way we want, that there's no hope for improvement. But I think this season is still about trying to figure that out. So I don't know that going to Max Brosmer, unless you've decided that Max Brosmer is now your guy that you're building around, I don't know that you would give it back to him or give it to Brosmer the rest of the way rather than trying to give McCarthy more time to continue to develop. But if he plays really well, that conversation probably becomes a little harder. I mean, I understand where it would be a more interesting, more difficult discussion for them as they're trying to plot things out. I still think this has to be, even as difficult as it is, figuring out if there's a path forward with McCarthy and kind of what that looks like. And again, I don't think anybody is looking at this as saying, well, 5 more games that he starts if he doesn't play on Sunday, and then we're making the final decision. I don't think that's how they're going about this, but you just need more information. And I think everything gets determined in the offseason based on how you feel. So you probably have to put him back out there. But, if Brosmer plays well, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation.
If he does, suddenly you have another guy you might want more information on.
Yeah, that would be the thing.
But you didn't spend a 10th overall pick.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I would think it takes another training camp, probably, where you're saying, okay, I mean, if Brosmer plays well and you go into next year saying it's these two guys, and if Brosmer looks better in training camp, I don't know, maybe something happens at that point. But it seems too early to me to pull up the stakes on it. But the more information they get on Brosmer, you have to react to all that. It's like blackjack. Anytime you deal a new card, the odds change and the overall stakes of things change. So
we should mention too. I forgot. Just it came to mind now. Speaking of the quarterbacks, Jefferson did not practice today.
Yes.
Either he was standing off to the side watching the receivers and Max Brosmer throw to the receivers. So we'll see what the issue is with him when the injury reports come out. But O'Connell had told us before that you might see him taking some reps off here and there as just monitor his workload moving forward. So, yeah, he's a guy that they're going to need out there, but there's no indication at this point that he won't be out there for them on Sunday.
Yeah, I would think that's probably a maintenance thing for him and saying, like you said, let's keep a few of the reps off of him. But, certainly worth watching as we go through the week because they need him to be a big part of this thing if they're going to get things moving in Seattle. And there's going to be a lot of things they have to do to have that work, but Justin Jefferson obviously is a big part of that formula.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we have anything else to break down.
No, I don't think so for now. We'll be back again on Friday. We'll check in with Emily. She is out in Seattle this week or wherever the facility is. I'm trying to remember the practice. You start to learn the date lines of all the practice facilities. Is it Redmond? Redmond, Washington, maybe? Sure. Maybe that's Microsoft. I don't know.
Bellevue? I don't know.
I think it's Bellevue. I think Redmond is Microsoft's corporate campus. So wherever in the Seattle metro area the Seahawks are practicing, it's apparently very picturesque with Lake Washington right there. I know that. Emily is there doing a story on Sam Darnold, getting the sense of what it's been like for him in Seattle this year and what the Vikings can expect on Sunday. So that story will be available later this week. We will check in with her from the Pacific Northwest on Friday. We'll also have the mailbag and Flashback Friday, I think, this week as well. So we'll have our 3-person crew back together after Thanksgiving. Hope you all have a great holiday. Thanks for watching this episode. Make sure you check out all of our work at StarTribune.com, and we will talk to you again Friday for the mailbag episode.